without further ado, we will get to our first speaker, who is James Churchill, and he is a teacher at Treehouse and a web developer, and his talk is called "Can Anyone Learn to Program?" So we'll get the answer.
Andrew, thank you for that wonderful welcome. That was amazing. Okay, so hi there, my name is James, as I just said, and I'm happy to be here to ask the question, can anyone learn to program? Now, I suspect that there might be a few, or maybe most of you who already are programmers, so I'm going to still talk to you like that's not the case. It kind of helps me kind of get into the groove and get into the mood, so just prepare yourself for that. But to help, maybe just imagine what it's like when you first started, right? Or maybe imagine what it's like to have made the decision to learn how to program, and you've already begun to wonder because you hit a difficulty that do you have the right stuff? Is this something that you can actually do? Or maybe you're an experienced developer who wants to become better at doing some aspect of your job or learn something new. Or maybe you just want to learn something else. Like maybe you want to learn how to play the bagpipes. Or maybe you want to learn how to ride a unicycle. Or maybe you just want to get really good at creating badass cosplay costumes. Or maybe you want to do all three at the same time, right? If that's your thing. No judgment here. So I think the question that we really should be asking ourselves is not if anyone can learn how to program, but can anyone learn how to do really anything? So let's start by examining the art of programming and what it takes to be a programmer. When thinking about this question, I kind of find it very, I often wonder, are there just people who naturally are capable or naturally built to program? And I'm not suggesting that these naturals would just know the syntax of a programming language or they would know the API to a specific library, but rather they just kind of get what it takes to build applications and do that kind of work. Or they get there with little effort compared to the rest of us. So if there are programming naturals, then are they just born that way? Do they just happen to have all of the right genes, right? Maybe they had the luck of having parents that were also programmers, or maybe they were professionals in a related field like mathematics or science. So what are some examples of naturals? So maybe the idea of a programming natural might make you think of one of these people. Or maybe it makes you think of someone that you work with today, or maybe you worked with in the past. I think you probably know who I'm talking about, right? It was that person who always seemed to understand the problem way before anyone else could understand it. Or they came up with the most brilliant solution, kind of almost without even really trying, right? So programming naturals, they just seem to be able to do what they do without any real struggle, without any real effort. So given that, are there innate abilities that just make someone better suited to be a programmer? And when I think about that, I would think of things like the ability to abstract think, problem solve, maybe even attention to detail could be considered an ability, right? That would give someone an advantage. What are some traits of successful programmers? How about intellectually curious or the love of lifelong learning? How about ability to multitask, or how about this one, able to receive criticism or feedback? That's probably important, right? Or the ability to communicate clearly, or even an abundance of patience. And are these traits things that we can learn? Or are we either good at these things or not? In other words, are our abilities fixed, or can we somehow improve our abilities? And given that, how important is talent then to learning how to program? How important is talent when learning how to do really anything? Let's play a game. I'm going to describe someone who is incredibly successful in their respective field. They weren't a programmer per se, but they were just really talented at what they did. So this person dropped out of college after only one semester. Then, after that, they went on to lead the development of a breakthrough product at the company that helped co-found. But then they failed to produce a follow-up. They tried again, and eventually they were forced out of their own company. After years of trying to repeat that success elsewhere, they were invited and came back to that company, and they led that company to become the largest technology company in the world. Who are we talking about? Steve Jobs, right? I gave you a gimme on that one. Let's try one that's a little bit more difficult. This person started their career at Disney, but was fired for promoting computer animation. Now, that doesn't sound like that sounds kind of like a crazy idea that someone would get fired for promoting computer animation, but this was a while ago. This wasn't a current thing. They went on to work for Lucasfilm after that, creating develop digital animation tools. So they weren't doing animation yet, they were developing the tooling around that at Lucasfilm. George Lucas eventually sold that division off because he didn't see the potential in what they were doing, okay? So another failure. That company then went on to make a film to show what digital animation was possible or capable of doing. That film ended up being so bad in its initial iteration that Disney was like super close to just killing the effort because they didn't want to spend any more money. Well, luckily they went on to fix that film because that film was Toy Story. And the company was Pixar, and the person that we're talking about is John Lasseter. So think about that. These are people that, when I think about Steve Jobs or John Lasseter, if you know who he is and what he's done in his life, they just seem to exude like the talent that they have. Just like it's natural, right? But they encountered extreme diversity as well, as we just kind of touched upon. So clearly talent isn't everything. And in these examples and many, many other, these people experience diversity at one time or another. So something else other than talent is at play. So here's the conclusion I'm going to draw. Talent is really just a starting point. Some people who have talent never progress really past that point. So they start off strong, but then never really do much with it. You see this, I especially have seen this a lot with musicians, for instance. But then there are others who start with far less talent than others who might start in a more talented place, but then they greatly surpass the people who maybe they didn't initially compare with, right? So luck doesn't hurt. That may be an obvious answer, is that luck plays some part of the equation to people's success, but there's a little bit of luck in every story. Probably everyone in this room could probably think of a point in time in your life where luck played a part. And that usually often plays out as being in the right place at the right time. But in the long run, what I think is far more important is how we cope with failure. Those that can deal with failure in a positive way will be able to excel past those who can't. So, do some people handle failure better than others? And if so, why? How much do you agree with this statement? You have a certain amount of intelligence and you can't really do much to change it. And this is a direct quote from the book Mindset. If anyone has read that, you'll recognize it. So if you take a moment to honestly answer that question for yourself, think about your abilities or traits, and think about whether they're fixed or whether that it's something that can be changed. It can be changed through learning. I know we all hate to be labeled, but it's helpful to define a couple of labels or categories when talking about this. So the first one I'm going to say that if you believe your abilities are fixed and can't be changed, then you have a fixed mindset. If you believe that your abilities can be developed through learning, then we say that you have a growth mindset. Let's talk about the fixed mindset for a moment. So with a fixed mindset, you constantly look for opportunities to prove yourself. It's how you show that you're capable of doing something. Given that, you look for situations where you naturally will shine, and you'll avoid situations where you'll struggle. If something takes effort, it means that you're not as smart or talented as you should be. Otherwise, that thing that you're being asked to do, you would just be able to do it, right? Because it's something within your capabilities. Success is proving that you're smart or talented. And when you encounter a setback, you really feel that as a failure because you believe that your traits are fixed. That failure is a direct measurement of what you're capable of. And it says if you failed at that thing, you're probably not going to try it again because, well, why bother? Now, in contrast, let's look at the growth mindset. The growth mindset, you don't feel the pressure to constantly prove your ability. And this is the case because you believe that your abilities can be improved through effort and learning. which just sort of allows you to relax and learn. You not only seek challenge, but these people thrive on it. The bigger the challenge, the more that they stretch. That's the thing they look for, right? Effort is what makes you smart and talented. Success is all about that stretching, that situation of stretching yourself to learn something new, developing yourself. Failure is not about the setback. Failure in this case, for someone with the growth mindset, is not being able to push through that setback. Why? Because you believe you can develop your traits. So failure is just an opportunity to learn. It's a signal that you have something to work on. So let's go back to our original question. Can anyone learn to program? The answer, which was probably obvious, is absolutely yes. In fact, I think anyone could learn anything. But let's be clear, I'm not saying that that's easy, especially programming. It's hard, right? But the best kind of learning, the kind of learning with the biggest reward, is almost always tough. And it's tempting to believe that this is what the path of success would look like. This is not my idea. I stole this from someone online. But the idea that you start at a point and you have this like nice linear progression, the more effort and time you put into it, the more that you get better at whatever it is that you're trying to do. This is more likely what happens, right? In the beginning, you have that early success. They call it the honeymoon phase. Like, yeah, this is awesome, And whether that's you're learning a new framework or you're taking on something substantial like learning how to program. And then some people call it the pit of despair. You fall into the pit of despair. I kind of like the idea of it being a pit of success because you're going to stay there and you're going to probably have a sequence of failures. But if you stay with it, and if you think of those failures as opportunities to learn and grow, you will climb back out, and that's where the success kicks in. So it's all about that ability to push through those setbacks and not be defeated by it. I could go on and on about the things that you could do to help yourself when learning something new, but for now, there's just one simple idea that I think you need to remember. Failure is not an indication of your abilities. The growth mindset teaches us that failure is just an indicator that you have an opportunity to learn. It gives you a positive way to deal with that failure by turning those failures into the opportunity to learn. And just one more thing. If you're an experienced programmer, take the time to reach out to others in the community or people that you may know who are starting this journey, or maybe they're already on the journey. Let them know that they're doing a good job, or if you see them do something that you're like, they're better at that than they used to be. Tell them. Even the smallest comment can make a huge difference. 17 years ago, I was a print designer who kind of dabbled in some HTML, and the company I worked for hired a consultant to come in to do some database backend development. I worked with this person for about a month, and then they took me off to the side and said, you should learn how to program. And up until that point, I just honestly assumed that was something that you would go to school for, and you wouldn't. There's a lot of things you could teach yourself, but that, for whatever reason, I just was like, no, that's unattainable, right? And furthermore, it wasn't for me. Well, I listened to them, and I have them to absolutely thank for everything else that followed after that point. So again, just the smallest of gestures can make a huge difference. Some resources. These are great books. If you only read one of these, I would recommend the first one on the left, Mindset. It goes into, it's by Carol Dweck, and she's the one who did all the research behind growth and fixed mindset. Really, really fascinating and well worth your time. And if you don't want to read it and you want to watch a movie, the first time I saw this film, it did not occur to me. And then I read this online and went, this is a movie about fixed and growth mindsets? You watch it, it is every aspect of the film is about growth mindset. So check it out. Thank you for listening, and I'm on Twitter at SmashDev.